Well, good afternoon and welcome to Masterpiece. I am so excited that each one of you are able to join us today, and I hope that you enjoy our painting that we will be doing today. But before we begin, I have a little devotional for you, and this is springtime. Weather's starting to get a lot nicer and sunny, and what I've really enjoyed about spring, and I always enjoy about spring, is the fact that the flowers start blooming, and I'm so excited every spring when winter leaves and spring comes and the flowers start popping up. And my son has been doing a wildflower collection for biology, and so I've been paying special attention to all those beautiful wildflowers that we see along the road. So what I have today is going to be about flowers. So the text for today comes from Luke 12:27. It says, "Look at the lilies. They don't toil and spin, and yet Solomon in all of his glory was not robed as well as they are." Many people would have you believe that God only supplies what we need and nothing more. But they haven't considered the flowers. If you want to know God better, obey Jesus and look at the flowers. They were God's idea. Why did God make so many flowers? All of the many different flowers are not necessary. Although flowers have some purposes, one kind of flower in one single color could have been made to meet all the needs. The fact is, so many different flowers are not needed. They are extra, something far, far beyond merely what was needed. We could live without all the different flowers, but life is so much more beautiful with them. God is not intent on you barely scraping by. He told you to ask and receive that your joy may be full. God desires your joy to be full. But don't make the mistake that so many do. Abundance of things will never satisfy you apart from God. But what a joy it is when you have close fellowship with the Creator and can thank Him for all the wonderful things He has provided for you because of His great love. In that context, things are a great blessing because they are a constant reminder of the goodness and love of God. Others tell us that God only helps those who help themselves and make us think that if it is to be, it is up to me. While it is true that we must cooperate with God, mostly by trusting Him and resisting our enemy and by standing in faith on God's word, it is not true that we have only ourselves to depend on. That was part of Jesus' point. God prospers flowers better than Solomon could achieve, and he was the richest man who ever lived. God can and will take care of you too, just let Him. Whenever I see flowers or whenever I think of the abundance God has provided, it reminds me of His love, and I say, thank you, Lord, for the flowers. Now, I did not write this, but it struck very personal for me because I am reminded every time I am out in nature that God does provide for us and He does look out for us. And it's something that I try to bring out when I'm teaching my little ones in Sabbath school, and we talk about all the things that God has created just for us. If there was only one person on the earth, I think God would still have created everything that we see around us today. So let's just remember that even though we may get discouraged, sometimes it's difficult to see the way out, but God always has a plan and He always provides for us. So let's have a prayer before we begin. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you so much for this beautiful day, for the beautiful springtime and the flowers and the trees and everything that you provide for us in nature that we can enjoy. I pray that you will help us not take that for granted, help us to be loving and kind to those around us, and please help us to always encourage each other and to be a blessing to others no matter what it is that we were doing throughout our day. Thank you so much for your Sabbath and for your day of rest. I pray that you will guide each one of us today and bless us in a special way. Thank you so much for this beautiful world you've created for us and for your love. Amen. All right, so this afternoon, before we get started painting, I have a couple of changes on the paint brushes that we will be using today. Now, if you only have the ones that you saw on the Facebook page, that is totally fine. I discovered that as I was painting this painting I got frustrated with a couple of my brushes, so I'm going to paint with a different one today, and that in the replacement, in replacing those two brushes with one. So first you're going to need a big brush to do the background. We always use our big brush for the background. And today we're going to be painting our background white. So we've done this before in Masterpiece. You'll just have to make sure that as you're going across the canvas, you just make sure that the whole canvas is wet. And on the Facebook page, I put on there that we would need a flat brush, a small flat brush, and then another brush, but it's got a rounded tip on it. It's called Filbert. So I got really frustrated with these two as I was trying to paint with them. And so I'm going to replace those two brushes with this angled square brush. So if you only have the ones that we put on the Facebook page, then you should be fine. You may not get frustrated like I did, but you can still do it. I obviously accomplished the painting. It just took me a little bit longer than I expected. And then you also need a skinny brush just to do a little bit of detail work. You don't have to, this painting does not have a whole lot of detail work. I tried to pick something pretty loose and pretty easy to do and complete within a short amount of time. So your little skinny brush you won't use as much. So I'm going to put those back here. The paints that we are using today is white, and we have black, yellow, and a green. You can choose whether you want a darker green, a lighter green. I chose yellow because I changed the color of my green a little bit and added a little bit of yellow highlights, so you're not using that much of the yellow. And then purple for our flowers. Now, if you wanted to change your flower color to red or pink or even a blue if you wanted to, feel free to do so. Use what you have at home or whatever your favorite color is. So I chose this painting today because all the flowers are blooming, and I had a really hard time deciding which painting to do. I was going back and forth between two different ones, and so I asked a little friend of mine that had been in my Sabbath school before. Saw her on a Zoom meeting for the breakfast club from the women's ministry does each Monday morning on Zoom, and she was so excited to do this painting, so I decided that the flowers was the painting to go today. So if you choose to do a different color flower, feel free to do so. So I already have my colors on my plate. So what I have put on my plate, we're obviously doing the flowers. Well, we're doing the background first. So you're definitely going to need white, and you'll probably need quite a bit of white. So I'm going to add just a little bit more. Make sure you shake your paint up before you start painting. So I also have my purple and just a tiny bit of black on my plate. So that way I'm ready to do my flowers when I get to that point. So make sure you wet your paintbrush a little bit so that the paint will glide across your canvas. And since our canvas is white and we are painting with white, it will be hard to see if you have got the canvas completely covered. So just be aware of the shiny spots on your canvas, and you can go up and down or you can go sideways with you're obviously not going to be able to see it, but the reason we're painting our canvas white, it kind of gives your canvas a primer, and it will be easier to paint everything else with the background covered white. So just make sure you kind of go from top to bottom, that way you don't lose track of where you've painted. And if you get confused, not sure if you got the whole thing, just look and see where your paint is wet. So just make sure you get a good covering. Some canvases I've noticed are a little bit harder to prime than others, but this one seems to be working pretty well. And some canvases will soak up your paint really quick. And if you paint with those little cardboard canvases that you can buy at the craft store at Walmart, those really soak up the paint. So you have to put a lot of paint on there. So make sure you get your whole canvas covered. Definitely use the biggest brush that you have. That way it doesn't take you that long to paint your background. And you don't really have to do, I'm just getting excess paint, but you don't really have to paint your sides on this because your background is white and your canvas is white. So this one's a pretty easy one to do. And we're not adding any extra colors in our background just because we want the flowers to stand out. So I'm already almost at the bottom of my canvas. Just make sure you get everything covered. And if you paint at a certain angle, or if you have to lay your canvas on the table that you're painting at, then you should be able to see where you need to add paint. Make sure you paint in a room with good lighting. That always helps. And I think I got my whole canvas covered. That was pretty fast. So once we get the whole canvas covered, as usual, when we're painting our backgrounds, or after we're done painting our background, we need to let it dry so that we are not just smearing colors on our canvas. Because if we were to go and paint our flowers on there now, it would just be a really light purple blob and we wouldn't get the end result that we were looking for. So we will I'll get my canvas dried. And if you need a speedy way to dry your canvas, you can find your hair dryer. And we will take a short break to dry the canvas, and then we'll be ready to start our flowers. Okay. So once you get your canvas dried, you want to make sure that when you look at it this way, that there are no wet spots whatsoever, especially right here in the middle, because that's where we're going to do our flowers. And obviously we're going to start with the flowers first, and then the greenery will be the very last thing that we do. So what I tried when I first started painting the flowers, I thought, I'm going to make 3 different colors. I'm going to have 3 different colors of the purple. And so I mixed some white with the purple that I was using, and then mixed some black with the purple. And I had 3 different colors of purple on my canvas. I discovered that that was probably, I created more work for myself. So what we're going to do is we're just going to keep our purple, and then we'll just add the color in the flowers as we paint it. So we're not going to worry about making other colors. So we are done with our big brush. Make sure you rinse that off, put that in your water and rinse it off really good. And let that dry. So I'm switching to my angled square brush. So that is what we are going to do the flowers with. If you want to use one of these other 2 that I did put, on Facebook, then you are more than welcome to use those. I mainly used this filbert brush last night, but I got really frustrated with it. So we are going to try this one and see how well that does, which it should be fine. So we're aiming for 3 flowers, because if you do 2, then your painting will look odd. If you do 4, odd numbers do much better when you're painting. So especially if they're big items. So we're going to, and you can put these anywhere. I'm just going to start filling in circles. So hopefully you like circles. Now you can make it as dark as you want. So you may need to go back and add some more purple after it dries. They don't have to be exactly round. You can kind of make them wavy. Just keep in mind that in the center, your flowers are going to be touching. And I am going to actually fill in the center. Instead of putting green in the center this time, I'm going to have the flowers actually touching all the way. So this doesn't have to be any rhyme or reason as far as the brush strokes, because it looks like my white's coming through, so I'm going to go back and go do another coat. But I want to make sure that I have this flower as big as I want it. And like I said, you don't have to make them perfectly round, because what flower is perfectly round? And I'm not sure if we're painting roses or we're just painting flowers in general. So if your favorite flower is a rose, then if you want to go for more of a rose look, then go for it. I've not painted too many roses, so I'm not quite an expert on that. So kind of get an outline of your flower, and then just go in and fill in the center. Then once we get all three of the flowers put on there, we'll let that dry and then probably do another coat so that it'll be a little bit darker and it'll look a lot better. So let's see, ready for our third one. So we'll just go ahead and fill in that center. But you might want to wait to do that until you get to the third flower. That way you know where your flowers are going to go. So you can kind of make them round. They don't all have to be the same size. You can make one larger than the others. Obviously my third one is a little bit larger than the other two, but that is totally fine. So you see I have a lot of white spaces I'm putting on this purple, so we'll dry that and then we'll come back and add some more purple to make it a lot darker. Thought about doing a different color, maybe a red or a pink, but I went with purple. Don't usually use purple very often. Most of our paintings we don't use a whole lot of purple that we've done in Masterpiece, so went with something different, and purple happens to be my favorite color. So all right, so I got my three flowers on there. Right now they just look like blobs, so I'm putting my brush in my water while I dry my flowers. So grab your hair dryer and you can dry those really quick. Okay, so once you have your flowers pretty much dry, I did get a little excess paint around the edge of this flower and then right in the center of this one. It is totally fine. Not completely dry with the hair dryer, but it is fine because I'm just going back over just to make this a little bit darker. And if you see when I'm using the same brush that I used the last time, so as I'm adding the color, not as much white in the canvas is showing through. If it does still show through a little bit, it is totally fine, because we are going to be adding some white and maybe mainly just white in the flowers to get different color variations. So we just want this dark purple color, or whatever our main color is. If you're not using purple, then whatever you're using for your flowers, we want to make sure that we have a good solid color foundation on those flowers before we move on to the next part. So starting with the first one again, we've got that one all covered. So don't go over it too much, because then as you're adding a second coat, it will start pulling the bottom coat off, and then it will pull the canvas color back through. So just be careful not to go over it too much. Just make sure you get enough paint on your paintbrush. When your paint starts to get sticky, that's when it will start pulling the first coat of paint off of your canvas. So just be careful not to spend too much time. As long as it's wet and it's not sticky, then it will go over your canvas really well. So sometimes these are little points that we may not get to bring out in Masterpiece when we're painting together, because I have your undivided attention. We do not have the audience like I normally do, so I can tell you whatever I want to, and you have to listen to me. So I'm going to smooth out the side of that flower a little bit. And the good thing about the angle brush is that it's a little bit easier to go around the edges. I think that is what really frustrated me the first time when I was practicing this painting, is I could not get too much detail work with the filbert brush that I was using. And I couldn't go around the edges of my flowers very well, and it just kept turning into a big mess. So that's why I thought today I would try this brush, the angle brush, and it seems to be working much better. So working on my last flower, and this time I am not going to do much drying. I'm allowing these two flowers to dry while I paint the third one. So I'm not going to take a moment to dry with my hair dryer, because I'm going to start adding different colors, mainly white, to my flowers to get a little bit different texture. Because if we were to leave our flowers like this, nobody would be able to tell that they were flowers. So finish up your third one. Then we're gonna go to back to the first one and add some white. So I am not even cleaning my paintbrush off at all. So if you need to dip it in the water, if you have a lot of excess paint, then I would just recommend wiping it off on your plate, on the side of your plate, and get some of that off. But you don't have to clean it off. If you still have white on your plate, that is what we are going to use. We may lighten and darken as we need to. So if you need to add some white to your plate, go ahead and do that. I actually have some left from my background. Did not use all of it. So what I'm going to do is, here's where I'm going to kind of go in a circular pattern, but it's going to be a random circular pattern. So starting with the first flower that we painted, I'm just going to take my brush and kind of move it along, if you move it in your fingers as you're going across the canvas, we're going to kind of create a center to the flower. And you can tell that I'm not really going in any particular direction, pattern, but I'm not leaving it like this. What I'm going to do is dip my paintbrush in just a tiny bit of the purple, and then I'm going to go over that white just to kind of create a lighter purple. Kind of smear that white in, kind of blend it if you need to. If you don't want to pick up any more paint, you can add some water to your brush and kind of do it that way. And if you don't like some of the lines that you've done, what I did is I let all of that dry, and then I went back with the original purple that I had, that I did these flowers with, and I just went and added some darker spots to it to kind of lighten that up. So I think that is what I'm going to do with this one. So I'm going to leave that one alone. You can always try dry brushing a little bit, grab some of the paint that's still wet and just kind of go over. Not even picking up any color on my plate at all. Just kind of smearing, making little smudges across the flower. So I'm done with this one for right now. I'm going to come back to that one and do some more work on that, but I want to go over here to this one, the second one, The good thing about the angle brush is you can go very lightly on your canvas with it. So it's like you're not even, doesn't even feel like you're touching the canvas. And you can create skinnier lines. So done with the white, I'm going to go back and picked up a little bit of purple and going back over that. Just a little bit more. Definitely don't want to paint this way with the wide edge of your brush. You're going to go with the skinny part. So you don't have to go over every single one if you don't want to. I'm going to wipe some of the paint off on the side of my plate and go over that just a little bit. Doesn't have to be exact. Okay, so I think I've got this one about where I want it. Check my pocket. Yes. Okay, so going back to my white, I'm going to do the same thing to the third flower. Picking up white, just lightly touch the canvas with the brush. And put as much white on there as you want. I'm going to wipe some of that white off, and my plate is much cleaner than it was when I practiced the first one, but I had 3 different piles of purple that I ended up not using. I only used the main color. So now I'm going to go back and pick up just a little bit of the purple and go over some of those white marks. And they don't have to be exactly right over them, just picking up a little bit of the white and kind of blending them into a lighter purple color. But it's okay if some of the white shows through. So just create a center. We're going to use the black just to kind of create a darker center. If you wanted to, you could use the yellow. I thought about using the yellow to make a different colored center, but I decided to go with the darker color. So just give it an illusion of having petals around the center. So what I'm going to do is, I'm done with the third one. I'm going to go back up here and work on the first flower that I started, working my way around, going clockwise. So I'm going to pick up, actually I'm going to rinse my brush off really quick. Try to get some of the white off, and make sure you have an old towel or a paper towel to clean off all the excess water off of your brush. So all I did is I got most of the white off. Don't see much white. There's maybe just a little bit, but I'm going to go back and pick up the purple color again. And I am just going in and around the white marks that I've already made. So you can see, or the lighter color, because I actually made a lighter colored purple. So I'm going along some of those lighter marks, and I'm adding the dark purple in there. So it kind of hides some of the, if you're not exactly excited about some of the petals that you've created, or the illusion of petals that you've created with the white or the lighter colored purple, you can go back and fix that with your original purple color, and it looks like you did that on purpose. So if you messed up somewhere, you can always fix it. I actually went over, when I did my first painting, I went over my flowers probably 3 different times because I did not like the color that they were, and it just wasn't working right with the brush that I was using. So I went over them several times, and looking at the painting, you couldn't even tell that I did that. It's just admitting that I did it. But you learn, hopefully you learn from the mistakes you make, or if you don't like something, there's always a way to fix it. May take a little while, may frustrate you, but you can always fix it. So just going over my second flower with the darker purple. And when you get all done, if you feel like you didn't add enough color in there, if you wanted to add some more white, you could. It's whatever you decide you like. I may actually close in the center of that flower a little bit more than my first one, but I'm going to work on the third flower before I go back to the first one. So I don't think I'm going to do a whole lot to this third one, because I actually like that one a little bit better. And if you wanted an even darker color purple, you could always add just a tiny bit of black to the purple. Maybe take some purple off to the side. I would not add all of that. Just do a tiny bit and mix it in and make a darker color. Last time when I painted, when I practiced this one, I got it a little bit too dark, and it just didn't turn out to be the right color. So I kind of messed up a little bit, but like I said, you would never know. So I made a darker color. Probably can't tell until it dries. If you wanted to go for darker center here, maybe where the 3 flowers come together, maybe the center is pretty dark, and you could kind of outline the edge of those flowers as they come together. That would look nice. You might not be able to tell on the camera, but I did create a darker colored purple. It'll probably show up a little bit better as it dries, but you don't have to be really exact with it because it's almost the same color and you really can't tell. But it will get darker as it dries, so if you want to put a few of those dark marks in there, we'll probably use that same color to do the center. I don't think I want to go straight black for the center. We'll probably just do a darker purple. So if you mix just a little bit of it, you're going to have to go back and mix some more. But if it's almost the same color, which this is almost the same as the background, then it's okay if you have to mix some more. I'm going to go ahead and fill in my center of that flower. I'm going to change this. I'm going to make this one a little bit smaller before I do anything. So I need to drag over some more purple, my original purple, and make some more of the darker purple, because I ran out. If your paintbrush gets a little too globby, then just go to the side of your plate and brush it off, and then bring it back to the center where you're getting your color from. So I made some more of the dark. You can just add a few in there just to give some color variation. And then the center, if you want a little bit of accent right around, some really sharp accent around the center. Once you get that darker color, you can go and add some more white and just go around. I think I'll do that on this one over here as well. You don't have to go all the way around if you don't want to. Okay, so I'm going to go back and close this one up. I'm going to make the center a little bit smaller. So I'm going to go with the original color just to add some wet in there, and then pick up a little white. Kind of close the circle, the center of that flower. And I'm going to finish that off with the dark purple. Didn't let any of that dry, just kind of smeared it all together, and I kind of created a different color in the center of this one than I had on the other ones, which I kind of like. I think this third flower needs some more white in here. And if you notice, I'm not even cleaning off my paintbrush, I'm just kind of smearing it all together. If you do too much, then you're just gonna all start blending together. So I think that's about all I'm doing. And if you notice that as my paint dried, my darker paint dried, you can tell that it's pretty dark in the middle. So I got a good combination of the purple and the black. So I am not even going to bother with drying this with the hair dryer because I am done with the flowers for right now. I'm going to let those dry, especially the centers. I think the only thing that I have left is I'm going to put some little dots here in the center, but pretty much done with the flowers. If you're happy with those, then I would leave them alone, let them dry. The only thing that you want to make sure, we're going to work on the leaves around the flowers, and I'm going to change up the leaves just a little bit. So it's good that I'm changing a little bit from the original, because it's always good to have, try different things. So I may try some different leaves for the flowers instead of like the ones that I used here on this first painting that I did. The one thing that we do need to do before we do the leaves is I've got some little buds over here on the outside of my flowers, and you can decide where you want them. I chose in between two flowers, and I did two on one side and two on another, and then I just did leaves the rest of the way. So if you need to, let's see, where did my little brush go? If you need to, go ahead and get your little skinny brush. You can do the detail work of the little flower buds with your skinny brush, and then if you need to, you can use this other one to fill them in, but your skinny brush, the buds should be so small that you should be able to fill them in with your little skinny brush, depending on how skinny it is. If it's too skinny, then you may need to use your angular brush. So you can decide where you want to put your little buds. And all I did was I just created some purple blobs on the outside of my flowers, and then I just went back and added some white to kind of give them the illusion that they were little flower buds. So you can go kind of oval shape. So when you're using your skinny brush, it helps to pick a spot on your canvas and use your pinky to help guide you. And with your skinny brush, you obviously do not want to press very hard, because then you'll just kind of ruin your brush. And you will have to do the same thing that you did with the flowers. You'll have to go back over the purple so that the white on the canvas doesn't show through. So just pick how big you want to make them and about the right shape. Okay, so if you want to put just like a little tag at the end of that little bud, then it kind of looks like it may be opening soon. So then you want to put another one in there. And I think we'll have this one going this way. So just paint little ovals first. And then kind of shape them how you want to. I've had to put almost all of my rose bushes that I have in my yard, except for my really big ones, out front. But I've had to put most of mine in my chicken's yard because my dogs keep eating them. And now that I have the roses in the chicken's yard, I've noticed that one of the little tiny, because my dogs whittled away one of my rose bushes to almost nothing, to just pretty much a stump. And when I put it in the chicken's yard and it started blooming, the chickens are now eating the rosebuds. So I'm hoping that it grows fast and the chickens will quit eating it too, because it was bad enough the dogs were eating it. Okay, so I've got my two little rosebuds here. Yes, they look awkward because there's nothing attaching them to the flowers, but we'll fix that. So you can either choose to put 2 more rosebuds down here, or maybe just 1, or you can do them up here. You can do 2 or 1. I think I'm going to do 2 on the same. I may just go with 1, maybe do a big one. Maybe this one's going to be a big flower coming. So you can kind of make it in the shape of an egg. I think I may have picked up some of the darker purple that I made too, which is fine. And maybe that one's got a petal starting to open as well. I'm going to make that one. You do it too skinny and then it's going to start looking like a little tulip. So we're just going to put 1 there. Maybe that one's starting to curl out and open up. So you will have to go back and add some more paint to cover that up. And it looks like those are wet, but I'm not going to take the time. I'll come back to those. I'm going to work on the, you can come back and work on the little flower buds as they dry. So I'm going to work on the leaves right now. So I'm going to grab my green. Make sure you shake it up. And a little bit of yellow, so you use both of those. Now I did switch colors of green that I had on my canvas, that I originally started with on my canvas, because I didn't particularly like that color green. So what I ended up doing, because I didn't like it, I added quite a bit of yellow. So I ended up mixing more of the yellow with the green that I started with, and it worked out. I like the color a lot better. The original green color that I had was too dark. And with the flowers being so dark, I just didn't want dark leaves as well. So I was trying to go with something a little bit lighter. So I found this one in our paint cabinet. And I'm going to try this one. It looks to be a little bit lighter green. So get some green, and it is much lighter. It is a thick paint, so make sure that if you need to, you can add some water to it to help it go across the canvas. And I actually dumped quite a bit on there. So start out with a small amount first, and then you can always add to your plate. And then I'm going to add just a little bit of yellow to my plate. Looks like this was more the green that I was going for whenever I was mixing my other green and yellow last time. And that was more the color that I ended up getting, but I added a lot of yellow. So, but if the darker green is all you have, then just get some yellow and that will change. So compared to how much green I put on my plate, I put next to nothing for the yellow. So what we're going to do is make sure we're going to go back to the angular brush, make sure it is clean. no purple on it, and a little bit damp. So this should help us create the shape of our leaves a little bit easier than the filbert brush that I was using when I first tried this. So you can do just any kind of shape of leaves that you want. If you're going for more of a rose bush type leaf, then we kind of need to make a stem with some leaves coming off of that. So I think that is what we are going to try on this one. It's always good to try new things. So I'm loading up my brush with green, and instead of painting flat like this, I'm going to turn it, and then I'm going to create, since I have no flower buds here, I'm going to create a stem, and we're going to go out this way with our stem. And sometimes green has a hard time covering on the canvas, so we may have to go over that again as well, like we did with the purple, but that is okay. So with the advantage of the angular brush is you can kind of make a little bit more detailed strategic placement on your canvas than with the filbert brush. So create your stem, and our leaves are now this may be, if I may go to my skinny brush to outline my leaves, that might be the better choice for you. Try not to paint your canvas with your other brush. I'm just going to lay that on my plate. So if you need to, use your skinny brush to outline your leaves. Probably get quite a bit of paint on your leaves, or just to do the outline. So we're going to go with that shape. I'm going to not fill that in with the skinny brush. I'll do that with the angular brush. So kind of go for a teardrop. Oh, I like this so much better than what I did the first time, so this makes me a lot happier. So we're going to put 5 leaves on this little branch. So once you get your leaves outlined the way you want them, and doing it with the skinny brush is so much better, then use your angular brush and just go in and fill them in, which shouldn't take that much. And like I said, you're probably going to need to do 2 coats in the, if you don't want your skinny brush to go in your black paint, then maybe you should put it in your water. But you'll probably have to go over your leaves at least one more time to get the color to stay in the leaf. So, good thing about the angular brush is if you create your leaves this shape and you get to the end of the leaf, you can use the longer part of your brush to help you get to the tip of your leaf. So I think I may have gotten a little too much green on my plate. Try not to dump that much on there, because I don't think we're going to use all that paint. So I just wasted some paint. So go around your leaf and try to get that filled in. Going to let that dry. Switching back to the skinny brush, we're going to kind of keep going back and forth. You can put the angular brush back in your water Don't really have to clean off the skinny one that much. So we're going to go over here and create a stem for the little flower buds that are coming out. And do that with your skinny brush. Don't want to do it with the other one. You may get into, try not to get into the purple of the flowers. If you happen to, you can go back and fix that. So did that stem. We'll go do this one. Kind of lift up as you're going to the center of those flowers so that you don't have to cover the green up. If you want to go around your little bud, you can do that as well. I think that looks a little bit better. So we'll go back and do that with this one. You'll have to go over that again too. I don't know why green doesn't cover as well, but it's kind of annoying. So there's our other stem for that little bud. And if you need to, you can maybe have a sprig of a leaf coming out this way. Just add some more green in there. Okay, so let's add maybe a sprout of leaves coming out this way. Maybe we only have 3 on that one. So still using our skinny brush. Create the outline of your leaves. If those are smaller, you could probably just fill them in with your skinny brush, but these leaves are a little bit smaller because it's just a smaller branch of leaves coming out from behind your flowers. So we'll just fill that in with the skinny brush. Just get lots of paint on there. Shouldn't take too long. And let's see, I think we need to add maybe a leaf over here. Maybe we have some leaves just starting to sprout branches from behind this flower. So maybe it's just a smaller one. And maybe we have one next to it. Or maybe they're coming from the same branch behind the flower. You just don't see the rest of them. So feel free to put whatever number of leaves you want to around your flowers. I think we need some over here as well. Maybe we'll do another small branch of flowers coming out. Or leaves, I should say. So maybe those are smaller. So try to go for the teardrop look on your leaves. but we got some smaller ones here. And I think we may be done with our greenery. If you wanted to, you could probably add maybe these sprouts by the buds, or maybe it's some grass coming through. Or maybe it's a leaf laying sideways, so we're going to put some next to this one just to add some more green. Okay, so once you get all the greenery that you want to around your flowers, now if you don't exactly like all the little leaves on the stems, you can go with something a little bit more abstract, like what I did with the first painting, and just make bigger leaves and random and wherever. Or if you, like I said, if you wanted to go with more symmetrical type, more order to your flowers, then you can do the leaves with the stems. Pretty much you can do your leaves however you want to. Definitely don't dump that much green on your plate, because I really wasted a lot, because don't need this much. I'm going to go back to this first one that I started down here, and I'm just going to, I did not switch from my skinny brush, so I'm just using the skinny brush just to go over the leaves and the stem again. Now you want to be careful not to do the same thing with like what I told you with the flowers. If you get to a certain point where, as you're painting a second coat on there and it is pulling that paint off of the canvas and you can see the white coming through the canvas, then you need to stop going over that spot, because all you're doing is just moving the paint away from that spot. So I'm just going and filling in and making a darker green, or covering, making sure the canvas doesn't show through. So just make sure that you get a fairly decent, it should be dry, just make sure you get a fairly decent coat on there, because I'm pretty sure you won't be happy with your canvas showing through. So before I move on to another stem, what I'm going to do is add a little bit of yellow and white to our leaves. So if you don't, if you have a little piece, small sections of your canvas showing through, like what I do on these leaves right here, that is okay, because I will most likely cover those with some white or some yellow as I go through. And it kind of, as long as you get most of the canvas covered up, then it looks a little bit more natural. So just make sure that if you're painting with your skinny brush, filling these leaves in, don't press too hard, because then it will probably create a mess and you'll go outside your lines for your leaf, and then you won't be happy with yourself. So just be careful. Not much pressure when you're using the skinny brush. Okay, so finish that one. What I'm going to do, not even clean off my brush, leaving it green, just pick up a tiny bit of white. If your white has dried out a little bit, you may have to add some water. But if you can find a spot where it's wet and that you can grab some paint, then go ahead and do that. And just lightly go around the edge. Wouldn't have to do the whole edge. And then if you want to create like you have a vein in there, then go up the center of your leaf. Yeah. And you can add as much as you want in there. If you get a little too much, wipe it off. Maybe go back over with the green so that it's not as obvious. If you got too much white, 302. If you have too much white on there, just pick up some of the green to make sure that you kind of blend your colors a little bit. So we're just keeping in mind that we're just adding some highlights. So again, go very, very light. And if you want to go down the stem, you can. You can do some big swatches of white. And I'm going to pick up a little bit of green and kind of smear that in, kind of blend that in. So that's much better. That way it looks like that leaf is getting highlighted right there. If you need to, or if you want to, you can add a little bit of yellow. So pick up just a tiny bit on your brush and maybe go in between some of those white spots. Maybe that leaf has a little bit more yellow to it. Just to give some different color. Let's see, we need to do the very end. I'm going to add some water to my white. And we've got the vein right there in the middle. And add some yellow. And there you go. So go in and fill in, if you remember what order you did your leaves in. I guess it doesn't really matter. That was the last one I did. So I think I'm going to go work on that one and then come back to those and then do some adding green to the stems of the flowers, and then we'll finish up with the little flowers, but we'll do those last. We'll do all the leaves first and then go back. So all I'm doing is just I'm brushing all the excess paint off. I didn't even clean off the yellow or the white. So I'm just picking up the green because I'm going to go back in and fill in my leaves on this stem. Okay, so make sure that you go around and get all of your leaves filled in. And then we'll highlight these leaves before we go on to the next set. So doing the same kind of technique that I did on the other leaves, just grab some white and then might have to go, if your leaf is dried a little bit, then go back and pick up some green, add a little bit of yellow in there, and keep doing the same thing. So we'll get our leaves taken care of, and then we'll go back and work on our little buds, and we're almost done with our painting. So you can kind of make your leaves lighter. I'm dragging some of that lighter color down into the stem. So we'll get some yellow going around this one. And kind of blend that in a little bit. Okay, so we've got this leaf over here. So we're not gonna, since this is such a loose painting, we're not going to do any kind of outlining on it. So once we finish up our leaves and our little buds, we'll put a few dots in the center of our flowers, and then we'll be done with our painting. So this one's very loose type painting, abstract if you want to think of it that way. It's a little bit of detail, but not a whole lot. So add as much yellow or white as you want to in your leaves. I'm going to do a little bit darker on this one. And didn't really like how that went, so we'll just cover that up a little bit. And you'll never know the difference. Okay, so working our way around to this one. If your leaves are pretty dry, then you should be able to cover your green pretty easy. Make that second coat go pretty quick. So we'll go do our second coat, and then we'll do our highlighting, and then we'll be done with this set of leaves. Fortunately, when you have smaller leaves, it doesn't take as long to cover them a second time. So add a little bit of white. Let's see, maybe we've got some white coming up the stem here and into this leaf. Right along the top. Just be careful that wherever you're painting, if you're anywhere your paint's still dry, just make sure you're not swiping your hand in it when you rest your hand on your painting. So I still have some green left on my brush at the top, so I haven't picked up any more green, but I was able to use the side of my brush a little bit and kind of blend that white in a little bit. So I'm going to go and add some yellow. Just for an added color there. The smaller leaves, you probably don't have to do a whole lot of detail on those since they're small. So I think that's good on those. We'll move to this set down here. So like I said, if your paint is pretty dry, then it'll be pretty quick to fill in your leaves for that second coat. So just try to make sure you don't lose the shape of your leaf and go outside. Don't color outside the lines. So you've already created the shape for your leaf. Try to make sure that you are not going outside your lines that you've already created. Then you might get mad at yourself. Okay, so we'll grab some more white. And this one I've created this set of leaves down here, I've created a little stem that kind of goes into the shape of the leaves. But if you add your white in a certain spot, then you can kind of make it look like you've got a stem right here that's holding those two leaves together. So I'm not adding a huge amount of color here. Maybe some yellow towards the tip of that one. So I think we're good with the leaves. So let's go back and do a little bit of color add-in, second coat with the little stems for the buds, the rose buds or the flower buds, and just making sure we have that covered pretty well. You shouldn't have to go over your little sprouts of greenery here around the buds. I'm just going to do the stems for the buds. And maybe add just a little bit of white down the stem of those buds. And if you need to blend it in just a little bit, then grab some of the green and kind of blend that so you still have a lighter lighter color there. Okay, so I'm completely satisfied with the greenery around my roses. I still need to fill in my rose buds just a little bit, and it shouldn't take long. So we'll clean off the skinny brush, and I'm going to go back to the purple color. So I'm going to be using the purple and the white. If you've been dipping into your white with the green, which I have, make sure that when you switch to the purple of filling in the buds that you do not add white from the area where you were getting your white from with the green on your, because I do have some green in my white. So just make sure you don't pick that up whenever you're going back to work on your flower buds. So still using my skinny brush. I guess I used the skinny brush more than what I thought I did. So I'm just going to fill in some white space in my buds, which this one doesn't look like it has a whole lot. So I don't have a whole lot to fill in. I kind of filled in the little lump right here, or I guess the little valley in that one, to make it look like that it's not to keep it from looking like a tulip. So I am actually adding just random spots I just want to make it wet, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to go along this side of my bud and add some white in there, and go ahead and pick up some of your purple to kind of blend the two colors. Here it doesn't matter that we're meshing the two colors, just to kind of give it a little different color variation. And so we kind of created a white area for our flower bud here. A little too much white, so let's see if we can fix that. That should work. Okay, so I'm done with that one. Oh, somehow I ended up picking up some green on my brush. So I will rinse that off really quick. I don't need green on my purple flower buds, so we'll rinse that off. Pick up some more purple. We'll come down here to these two and fix those. Just make sure you have none of the canvas showing through. And again, before we move to the next one, I will add some white, just a very little bit. I just barely get the tip of my brush. Don't even know that you can see that on camera, but just a little bit of that white on my brush. And you can pick up some of the wet purple on your flower and kind of, give it blend those colors in really well. So I'm done with that one. So let's go to our third one. Fill that in. Maybe that one has not sprouted. Probably should have gone with more green around that one. So add some white there, and I am done with the buds. Pretty much done with everything. So what we need to do, I have a couple of areas where we need to add just a little bit more detail, and we'll call it good for this one. So cleaning off my skinny brush, we're not actually using the brush part. So I'm flipping my paintbrush around. I'm going to use the end of my paintbrush. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put 3 white dots inside the center of my flower. So I'm dipping the non-brush end of my paintbrush into my white paint, and try not to pick up any green. And then we're going to put some dots in the center of our flowers. So that kind of adds a different texture to your center of your flowers. And 3's good. I wouldn't do more than 3 because then it's going to look funny. Might start looking like a sunflower. So added those 3 dots in each center of the flowers. And you can wipe off the end of your paintbrush. And then what I'm going to do, just to add a little bit of color on the outside, probably here and here, I'm just doing the same thing. The end of my paintbrush, I'm going to dip in the purple and then just create some color on the outside just to add just one more thing to your painting. You make those big as you want or small. If you want to just put one here and maybe one there, maybe another one there, or maybe 3. There we go. So just add something different to the outside of your flowers, and I think I will call that good. I think I've got all my flowers done the way I want them, and the leaves look good, and we are done with our painting. So I hope that you have enjoyed our masterpiece painting this month, and we will see you again another time. Thanks for joining me today. Bye.